Texe Mars. In my latest book, Mysterious Monuments, I reveal the astonishing facts of an architectural colossus spreading its tentacles across this globe. Who is behind this architectural colossus? What are their goals? Do they represent a dangerous threat to you, to me, to our liberties? There's an old canard, of course, that holds to the maxim, the rich are different than you and me. They have money, and we don't. But in fact, it is more than money alone that separates these super wealthy Illuminati barons, magnates, titans from you and me. Today, we're going to investigate the lifestyles of the Illuminati rich and famous. We'll also look at the lifestyles, the decadence, the opulence of some people who, though they may not be part of the Illuminati elite conspiracy, nevertheless are people whose examples it would be wise for us to consider in framing our own lifestyles, behavior, and conduct. And specifically, we will examine where the rich and famous dwell and the architectural secrets of the storied bloodlines and dynasties of the Illuminati elite who secretly rule America and the world. The Rothschilds, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Astors. America is a land of contrast, overflowing with an intelligent population, a strong middle class, but also a segment of poverty-stricken people. But it is the rich and famous we're going to be looking at in this report. And yes, the United States is unquestionably the land of billionaires. Their estates are lavish, fabulous, sometimes stupendous. This man, Barack Obama, may not be so super rich himself, but he seems to have, well, some very wealthy people behind him, as do many politicians in America. This is the Getty Estate in Atherton, California. Atherton is called, at least the street where these homes are, is called Billionaires Row. And this is where Barack Obama was invited to meet the billionaires as he began his quest for the presidency of the United States in the year 2007. You'll see that the riffraff, of course, and that is probably you and me and many others, is kept away by law enforcement. Of course, many galas and parties are held by the super rich of the Illuminati, as well as other wealthy people. I call these the circuses of the wealthy. We see the banquets that they hold, the luxurious costuming that they wear. These are pictures of some of the old parties of the decadent 20s and 30s, and of course leading up until today. Look at their costumes. Look at some of the shenanigans going on. Extravagant lifestyles, but also behind the scenes, extravagant religious taste. First, we have discovered in our investigation that most of the Illuminati elite are Freemasons and members of other secret societies. But what do the Masons really believe? What do such orders as the Order of Skull and Bones, the Bohemian Grove, what do they practice behind closed doors? Albert Pike, who wrote Morals and Dogma, one of the most celebrated of Masonic books, talks about Lucifer. Lucifer, the light bearer. Strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. It is he who bears the light. Doubt it not, said Pike. Another man, Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree, who was called the greatest Masonic scholar of the 20th century by the Scottish Rite Journal, the official publication of the largest Masonic organization in the world, headquartered in Washington, D.C., talked about Lucifer as well, and the energy forces that he makes available to his servants. He said, when the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. Their taste for Masonic philosophies, occultism, and New Age extravagance can also be detected in the symbols the rich and famous display. No, they do more than display these symbols. Often they venerate and even worship the symbols. Take, for example, the wealthy Illuminist John Fetzer of the state of Michigan, founder of the John E. Fetzer Foundation. He was a great communications baron. He owned the Detroit Tigers baseball team. Here we see him with crystals, which many in the New Age movement and the occult world believe possess supernatural energies. He established the John Fetzer Foundation on a wooded 55-acre tract outside of Kalamazoo, Michigan, deeply involved in occult spirituality, promoting the so-called relationship of mind, body, and spirit. Millions of dollars plowed into this foundation. Do they believe in Christ Jesus? No, but they honor what they call the Spirit, the Christ consciousness spirit. Inside the building of the Fetzer Foundation is a meditation room, a hall of records, and statues of divine philosophers of true wisdom. The Greek philosopher Socrates, the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, even Joseph of Arimathea, the King of France, the Christian mystic St. John of the Cross, and Thomas Jefferson, who seems to be a great hero of the Illuminati and its elite. Of course, there are people who are not so rich as the fabulous bloodlines of the Illuminati, and yet they are favored by the Illuminati, and they are put in their positions in the thrones of world power. For example, Ronald and Nancy Reagan. These men and women lead a charmed life. He was called the Teflon president. Interestingly enough, he always kept a rabbit's foot in his pants pocket to bring him good luck. A believer in supernaturalism, as are all the Illuminati. It was discovered during the late stages of his presidency that an astrologer, Joan Quigley, was consulted daily and hourly. And the White House staff often were overheard to say about a matter, "What does Joan say?" It seemed that there was a president behind the president, and she was an occult astrologer. Does this sound silly to you? Does it sound preposterous? Well, not everyone would agree with you and I. Millions today believe in astrology, and certainly the Illuminati elite and all of the gods and goddesses and creatures of the zodiac. In 1995, it came out that the Orange County, California treasurer had squandered billions of the public's dollars. Did he use certified public accountants to handle the public's money? Well, perhaps, but in addition, he consulted an astrologer and lost a fortune of taxpayer dollars. Yes, the astrological gods and goddesses are worshipped by many in the elite. This large zodiac clock is on the front facade of Bracken House in London. Look closely, and you will see the figure of a dark man, the face of a dark man inside the sun at the center of it. Who is he? It is none other than Sir Winston Churchill, the former Prime Minister during World War II of Great Britain. Well, what about America? How about our leaders? How about our financial leaders? We've already seen President Reagan. Are there others? Well, of course, visit the Federal Reserve building that takes care of the money power of the United States, the Federal Reserve banking system. And when you enter the lobby, look up to the ceiling, for there you will see a great mural. This mural, a zodiac painted. Are the fortunes of Wall Street and America's financial destiny guided by the astrological transit of stars and the planetary bodies? Why is the zodiac painted on the very ceiling of the Federal Reserve building? Yes, these gods and goddesses of the heavenlies are worshipped and adored by the rich and famous. But sometimes they can take a very cruel and vicious bent. Money can destroy as well as reward. And the Illuminati elite are able to cruelly manipulate commodity and stock markets, crushing the life dreams of individual investors, robbing families of their savings, homes, and livelihoods, and leaving tens of millions desperate, starving, and possibly suicidal. There's nothing wrong with money, but what of the inordinate love of money? Consider that the chief temple, that's right, the chief temple of the money men of the elite is found in New York City at Wall Street and Broad. It is the New York Stock Exchange building. But look, and you will discover that it is in fact designed as a Greek temple of religion, and the goddess of prosperity is to be seen at the center of the triangular pediment above the fancy and ornate Corinthian columns of this ancient temple of religion. Imagine the goddess with outstretched hands, but look at the figures around her. Notice some lie prostrate in a begging, almost desperate position, and then there are the children that lie at her feet, but watch out for the lecherous old men seeking to reach out and pick them up. On Wall Street, they say that a time of prosperity brings a bull market in stocks. But where does this symbol of the bull come from? It was found at the gate into the ancient city of Babylon, along with a dragon. But in Egypt also you will find the sacred bulls and cows. These were on the tomb of Egypt's Nefertari in Thebes. And then, of course, we go to Greece. All of these mystery religions, including the practice of astrology, is found in Illuminati families today. Look at this drawing of the ancient goddess temple on the Acropolis in Athens, Greece, and you will find a bull, a bull idol at the entrance. A bull. What does it represent? The prosperity of the elite, of course. And in New York City today, there are also many bulls. Consider this one, plastered with dollar bills on the streets of New York City. And this golden cow, and this great stock market bull in the financial center of New York City on the sidewalks. Everywhere you walk in New York, you will see this great symbol, the bull. But it is not only New York. Look at Philadelphia. At the Tabernacle United Church on 37th and Chestnut Streets. What is this strange winged bull doing at a church? Now we're going to examine the actual dynasties and bloodlines of the Illuminati. We will see where they live, how they live, and we'll discover their architectural secrets. Some would say, shh, keep quiet, say nothing. This is Jacques Delors from France, former head of the European Community, arriving for a conference at 10 Downing Street, residence of England's Prime Minister. The caption under the photo in the European newspaper here read, Jacques Delors gives nothing away as he arrives at 10 Downing Street this week. But we will give it away. This is Nathan Rothschild with his wife in London, England. The Rothschild dynasty, many believe, is the most powerful in the world and the richest. The original 5 Rothschild brothers were called the 5 Arrows. This is the house of the Red Shield, because that is the meaning of Rothschild, in Frankfurt, Germany. A modest ghetto residence. It was the beginning of their dynasty and of their many mansions to come. Fritz Springmeier, who wrote the outstanding book Bloodlines of the Illuminati, said of the Rothschilds that they were and are the archdemons of progress. Heinrich Heine, the famous German Jewish writer, once said something quite interesting. Seeing again this connection of religion and money, he stated, quote, money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet. Springmeier went even further in his book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. He said that the Rothschilds have another god besides money. According to eyewitnesses who visited the British Rothschild homes, the Rothschilds worship yet another god, his name Satan. According to the allegations of Springmeier, the Rothschilds actually set a place for Satan at their dinner table. Could it be true? This is the Rothschild family at prayer in this famous painting, 1800, by artist Moritz Daniel Oppenheim. The question is, to whom were they praying? Observe the 6 lit candles on the table and the red drapes hung in the room. Money again becomes the object. This is the image of Baron Edmund de Rothschild. It is on the 500 shekel note of the nation of Israel. Israel honors the Rothschild and its incredible fortune. And the Rothschilds are responsible for much of the prosperity of Israel with their control of the world's banking system. Here, the 500 shekel note with a Rothschild and the sign of prosperity, the fruit of the vine. The Rothschilds can be a very austere sect. This is England's Sir James D. Rothschild, about 1935. He has his clenched right fists on what are believed to be mystical Kabbalistic text, and his left hand is held in a Masonic position. Today we have other powerful Rothschilds. This, as you can see, in the middle is Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. But what is he doing with these 2 other gentlemen, and who are they? To his right, to your left, is Warren Buffett from Nebraska, the state of Nebraska, United States, one of the richest men in the world, and certainly in the United States. There he is with Hollywood actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, governor of California. And to Schwarzenegger's left is Lord Jacob Rothschild. They're standing on the front lawn of Waddesdon Manor. The year is 2005. Only a few months later, Schwarzenegger declared that he would run for the office of governor of the state of California, and he won the election. Did he go to Buckinghamshire, England, to the estate of Lord Jacob Rothschild, he and his financial advisor, Warren Buffett? And did Rothschild give his approval for Schwarzenegger to take this high office? Certainly they control many politicians. John McCain, Senator John McCain, when he was running for president of the United States on the Republican ticket in 2008, traveled to London, England, where the Rothschilds, and especially this Rothschild, Britain's wealthy Nathaniel Rothschild, seen here with his lusciously beautiful wife, along with Lord Jacob Rothschild, held a great banquet, a fundraising banquet in honor of the senator from the United States. It violated American campaign laws to take financial assistance in a campaign from foreigners, but that did not stop the Rothschilds, nor did it stop Mr. McCain. Sometimes the Rothschilds are hidden. This is Cable News Network's Anderson Cooper, who has a program, a very popular program each night. It turns out that Mr. Cooper is a member of the Rothschild clan. They have many estates all over the world. These are just a few of the many Rothschild estates. This is Waddesdon Manor in Buckinghamshire. Notice the Osiris, the sun god of Egypt. The X shape denotes the sign of Osiris. Many of the statues and the furnishings of this great manor, this great estate of Lord Jacob Rothschild, are occultic in nature. Consider this incredible fountain with mind-boggling sculptures of vicious sea serpents attacking and bringing horror to people. Yes, it's just outside the fabulous estate of Lord Jacob Rothschild. And inside we see all kinds of extravagant devices. This is the silver set at the Rothschild estate. Notice its reflection of pagan taste, in this case the androgynous Poseidon, the god who rises up from the sea, shades of Revelation 13:1. And notice he has the trident in his hand. He is androgynous. It is hard to tell whether this is a man or a woman, god or goddess. The trident, of course, denotes the unholy trinity of the pagan philosophies. The Rothschilds had many servants and have them today all over the world doing their bidding. One such servant was a man named J.P. Morgan. We see him here raging against a newspaper man who dared to take his photograph. J.P. Morgan, in his time during the 20s and so forth, was called one of the richest men in the world. But when he died, he left only a paltry $1 million in his estate. Many believed that he possessed hundreds of millions of dollars. Where did all the money go to? As it turned out, it belonged to the Rothschilds all along, and Mr. Morgan was simply their agent in the United States. This is the ornate library that he bequeathed to the world, and it is full of all kinds of occult items and extravagances. There are other servants as well in the political realm. You'll notice this man. He served as President of the United States for 8 years, William Jefferson Clinton, giving a very curious sign to the former Governor Jerry Brown. Time magazine seems to be wrapped up with the Illuminati elite, and certainly Bill Clinton, who served the Illuminati elite so well in his terms as president, was honored as Man of the Year by Time magazine. But notice something very odd, very strange. Notice that Time magazine stretched the M letter. This became horns for President Clinton. Horns. Was he our first devil president? Well, evidently, according to Time magazine. Now, this woman, Pamela Harriman, in fact, as you can see, her biography called her the life of the party and gave the full name Pamela Digby Churchill Hayward Harriman, but she seemed to have many names. She was the woman, it is said, who made Bill Clinton president of the United States. How did she do it? She was a Georgetown socialite. Her husband was Averell Harriman, former governor of the state of New York, former ambassador to the Soviet Union. He was the patriarch of the Order of Skull and Bones, and she was called Madame Skull and Bones. Young Bill Clinton, as a student at Georgetown University, a Catholic Jesuit school, became a very close and intimate friend of Pamela Harriman, the life of the party. She introduced him to all of the bigwigs, including her patriarch Skull and Bones' husband. He did her a favor, of course. This woman, Madame Skull and Bones, who prior to marrying Harriman actually was the mistress of one of the European Rothschilds, was made ambassador to France. This is the Georgetown estate where Bill Clinton visited and became a rising star. The estate of the Harrimans and Pamela Harriman. Of course, there are other members of the Order of Skull and Bones. Chapter 322, right off the campus of Yale University. This man, for example, also giving a strange hand sign that we will all recognize. This man, his father, and his grandfather were all members of the Order of Skull and Bones and became quite rich thanks to the Illuminati. We go back to Time magazine again, and here we see other Illuminati elite. There is the mayor, the very rich billionaire Mayor Bloomberg of the city of New York, and holding his arm around him in so much loving and in so much a loving way is again we see Arnold Schwarzenegger. But look close at this cover of Time magazine. Notice Schwarzenegger is wearing a ring that he seems to want people to notice. Is that a Masonic ring? And then beneath the green tie, the green color, of course, denoting prosperity and money, you will notice he is wearing a very strange belt buckle. And what is the image of that belt buckle? I believe you can judge that for yourself. But there are others as we continue our trek, our journey into the world of the Illuminati. Take this man, for example, holding up his iPod. Stephen Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer Corporation. Did you know that in founding this corporation, in inventing, along with another man, Steve Wozniak, the first Apple computer, It was priced retail at a very unusual amount of money. The first Apple I computer, priced at $666. Notice the logo of the Apple Computer Corporation. It is an apple, a fruit, with a bite taken out of it. You'll recall that in the book of Genesis, the serpent invited Adam and Eve to take a bite out of the forbidden fruit. Here is Stephen Jobs sitting lotus-legged Eastern style inside his mansion. One wonders what is going through his mind. We leave the computer world to go to the religious world. Here we have a servant of the Illuminati. His father was a U.S. Senator from Virginia. I'm talking about Pat Robertson, televangelist, billionaire, founder of Christian Broadcasting Network and the 700 Club, on the cover of Time magazine, giving a secret Masonic hand sign. He worked for J. Peter Grace of the Knights of Malta in Brazil. Later, he became a televangelist. He ran for president of the United States at one time, or at least ran for the nomination of the Republican Party. He was ordained for the Christian ministry at a Norfolk, Virginia church named appropriately the Freemason Street Baptist Church. Billionaire Pat Robertson. But what of these bloodline dynasties, the ones that are super, super rich, far beyond the Schwarzeneggers or even the Bloombergs or the Bill Clintons or the Stephen Jobs? Let us take a look, for example, at the Vanderbilts, at one time the richest dynasty in America. As these photos give evidence, the Vanderbilts, and their heirs still are alive today, were more wealthy than the kings and queens of Europe's nobility. In fact, one of the Vanderbilts became the Duchess of Marlborough after she married Great Britain's Duke of Marlborough. Again, we have the fancy circuses and debutante balls and secret parties of the Illuminati rich and famous. This is Alice Vanderbilt, carrying an electric light torch at an extravagant fancy dress ball in 1883 in New York City. Alice, the newspapers of the time said, came dressed as that new invention, the electric light torch. The society columns of the newspaper said that Miss Vanderbilt was dressed in white satin, trimmed with diamonds, and with her head one blaze of diamonds. But it is the estate of the Vanderbilts that is most revealing of all. The Biltmore estate, the largest in America, in Asheville, North Carolina. Its spacious overflowing gardens and grounds give evidence of its richness. But yet, we will observe the monstrous, ogre-like gargoyles built into the exterior stone, seeming to menacingly peer down at onlookers. Evidence of the elite worship of strange gods and goddesses. The interior of the Biltmore estate is stunning in its opulence. This is the great banquet hall. A visitor, writer William James, the philosopher, called it a cathedral. The library is telling with its idols, its ornate fireplace with idols of goddesses, a Roman tapestry. On the ceiling is a fresco painting. Look up and you will see the Chariot of Aurora by Giovanni Antonio Pellegrini, originally from the Pisani Palace in Venice, Italy. In the painting, the goddess Aurora holds in an outstretched right hand the torch of illumination. Of course, the fire of the Illuminati. This is a 250-room mansion. Some believe it is the world's or was the world's headquarters for Illuminism. This is an interesting room. One observer of occultism, a former member of a witchcraft sect, noticed that this room has a large plaque which reads, quote, the assemblage of the gods. Their tapestries with such satanic principalities such as Pan, Zeus, Poseidon. David Meyer, researcher of the occult, former astrologer and witch, now a Christian, says that this is witchcraft because this appears to be a table of two covens with a high priest on one end and a high priestess on the other. At least those are his allegations. This is the builder of Biltmore, George Vanderbilt. And this is Richard Morris Hunt, the architect of the Biltmore estate. He's standing by a fountain in the outer court. Notice that Hunt's right foot and leg are pointed. Oh yes, on purpose, obviously. And you'll notice very much a bust of a satanic figure is shown exactly where his right foot and leg are planted. There are many other Vanderbilt mansions other than just the Biltmore. This one, Mrs. Alva Vanderbilt's summer cottage, was called a Greek temple for the Vanderbilts. She said that it was a gift to her from the goddess. There are, of course, the obligatory parties, balls, and circuses of the elite. Here we have Vanderbilt dynasty heir Alfred Gwynn II and his wife, Jean Harvey. They're arriving for a notoriously decadent black and white ball in New York City at the Plaza Hotel, put on by the famous gay novelist Truman Capote, who wrote the hideous book In Cold Blood. But how did the Vanderbilts get their great wealth? Well, it first came from a man named Cornelius Vanderbilt, who cherished calling himself the Commodore, although he had no naval military rank at all. This shows Cornelius Vanderbilt in 1846 at the peak of his riches and fame. He built the greatest railroads in America, and this was the source of his great fortune. But how did he know? How was he able to make so much money? He gives credit to the spirits. That's right, to the spirits from the beyond. Frequent consultations with spirit seers. His attendances at seances led by mediums. They gave him stock tips. They gave him business advice. In fact, Cornelius Vanderbilt professed that he never once made an important investment decision until first receiving advice from his friends in the spirit world. It would seem that such spirits can drive a man insane. But maybe Cornelius Vanderbilt was already insane, because his biographical researchers remark that he was the first to admit that the accumulation of money had been a mania with him from the time he was a young man. In fact, Vanderbilt once confessed, "I have been insane on the subject of money-making all of my life." Maybe this insanity is the reason why he built one of the greatest structures of all time, Grand Central Terminal in New York City. The Roman Caesars would have been proud of this incredible monument. And on the pediment was this great statue, and it is still there today. The mystery god Mercury, or Hermes. Notice he's carrying his caduceus serpent pole. This massive clock, 13 feet in diameter. It allows for the number 6, or 6, to be opened out like a window so that something, perhaps a talisman or charm, can be deposited therein. This is a statue of the Commodore Vanderbilt, right hand and arm presenting a Masonic pose outside New York's fabulous Grand Central Terminal. Another Vanderbilt was featured in 1881 in the New York newspaper, the Daily Graphic, upon his death. The newspaper estimated his wealth at a staggering, for that time, amount of $200 million. In that newspaper was a collage of the estates of the various Vanderbilts, and also a picture of the Vanderbilt family tomb, designed as a huge Egyptian obelisk. We go from the Vanderbilts to a current Illuminati dynasty, the Canadian bloodline of the Bronfmans. Edgar Bronfman Sr. was formerly head of the World Jewish Congress. His son, pictured here, is Edgar Bronfman Jr. He's CEO of movie companies, music companies, but he's also head of Seagram's, the giant, world-leading liquor conglomerate. Interestingly enough, Seagram's has a whiskey that it offers the world and sells. This is an advertisement for Crown Royal Whiskey, produced by the Bronfman dynasty. Notice the unusual nature of this advertisement. There is, of course, the serpent wrapped around the bottle of whiskey in the form of a satanic S. And, of course, there is the great crown. Crown Royal. Is the serpent not the crowned serpent? Does he represent the Bronfman dynasty? And there is simply one word at the top, the word tempted, with the question mark. Tempted? Is this some kind of a hellish joke? Again, you decide. The Bronfmans are not the only family with strange creatures as part of the family crest. This scene is the facade of the Astor Estate Sports Pavilion. John Jacob Astor, a Freemason, was also once the richest man in the United States. He made a giant fortune from fur trading, real estate, opium. But notice the family crest. Ah, yes, we have the great crown again. And then what is that creature? Could it be a salamander? Could it be a dragon? The Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City was named after Mr. Astor, whose name, incidentally, means star. The Astor Library became the New York Public Library at 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. And the two marble lions out in front on the by the stairs were donated by the Astor family. New England seems to have more than its share of the Illuminati elite. This is Newport, Rhode Island's Chateau-sur-Mer, the palatial home of a wealthy Chinese trading merchant, Mr. William Shepard Wetmore. Notice that inside in the dining room, the fireplace features a tribute to the lustful and drunken Bacchus, the Greek god of orgies and partying. But look very close. Do you see the witch's hat? Is the witch holding a vase? Down in the southern part of the United States, in Florida, in the deep south, you'll also see many homes of the wealthy Illuminati, rich and famous. This is the pools and gardens of Vizcaya, the luxurious estate on Biscayne Bay near Miami, home of James Deering, son of the founder of the Deering Harvester Company, which today is the International Harvester Corporation. On the estates of the rich and famous, you will see cherubs, dolphin fish, fountains of pagan gods and goddesses. This, for example, is Swan House, a Baroque facade mansion in Atlanta, Georgia. In Charleston, South Carolina, sits the Roman-style William Roper House, owned by a succession of the world's richest men, including Solomon Guggenheim, New York multimillionaire, Wall Street's Richard Jenrette, and many others. Prince Charles of England has visited this home, as have many other royalty and dignitaries. It sits in Charleston, South Carolina, on the 33rd parallel, the number 33 being very important in the Masonic order. We go across the United States to the southwest to the state of New Mexico, to the home of Senator Stephen Dorsey in Abbott, New Mexico, clearly revealing the occult philosophy. Protruding gargoyles seem to be poised to attack interlopers, and, yes, again, the heads of pagan gods and goddesses. But for a truly fabulous, opulent estate, revealing with its pagan symbols, we go to Delaware, the small state of Delaware on the East Coast, and the home, the mansion of the DuPonts, famous for nylon, but many other chemicals as well, and I might add Teflon. You'll recall we discussed Ronald Reagan, the Teflon president, because all misfortune seemed to bounce right off of him. It is the DuPont Corporation that gave us the Teflon for our pots and pans, the non-sticking element. The fabulous mansion and estate in Delaware of the DuPonts. Notice the grounds outside. Do you see it? The great owl symbol, the skull and bones also engraved thereon. This is Alfred DuPont, founder of the DuPont Nemours chemical fortune. And, of course, the garage of the DuPont mansion with its Rolls Royces. Outside in the Maze Garden on the 300-acre ground of the opulent DuPont Nemours mansion and garden in Wilmington, Delaware, is this statue, this sculpture called Achievement. It depicts the Triton, a merman, and Neptune's son. Neptune was also called Poseidon. Again, we have the great god who rises up out of the sea. 47,000 square feet in all, the DuPont mansion. It was one of the DuPonts who wrote a book called Philosophy of the Universe, in which DuPont, who originally came from France, stated that it was necessary for the illumined, superior, godlike person to consult a chain of immortal spirits beyond, whom he called optimates. It was his insistence that the Illuminati could communicate with the demon spirit world and thus achieve success here on planet Earth. The Rockefellers certainly deserve to be mentioned in any study of the Illuminati rich and famous. This is David Rockefeller Sr., pictured in the glossy magazine Town and Country, president of Chase Manhattan Bank, founder of the Trilateral Commission, head once of the American sovereignty-hating Council on Foreign Relations, builder of the great Rockefeller Center and the World Trade Center towers that came down on 9/11. David Rockefeller, giving a Kabbalistic Masonic hand sign, by the way. It was John D. Rockefeller who created the tremendous fortune by building the Standard Oil Company, a monopoly and cartel. Here we have an early oil field owned by John D. Rockefeller. By 1878, the Rockefeller Standard Oil controlled over 95% of the oil, the pipelines, and the refineries in the United States. Even the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that this was an illegal criminal monopoly. Today, of course, it has been broken up into a number of incredibly powerful oil organizations, ExxonMobil and others. If we go to the gravesite of John D. Rockefeller, we'll find something very interesting. This, in fact, is the gravesite of John D. Rockefeller, and note that it is marked, yes, by a great Egyptian obelisk. The Egyptian religion, with its astrology, with its legend of sexual rituals and decadence, and, yes, a slave plantation, a new order of the ages, the Egyptian obelisk, which is actually the phallus in the legend of the Egyptian religion, the phallus of their great sun god Osiris. It is a sign of, should I say, erection and resurrection for the Illuminati. Here's Winthrop Aldrich, chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, one of the Rockefellers in this picture. Time magazine again, this is banker David Rockefeller, the current head of the Rockefeller clan, and we travel to the estate of the Rockefellers on the Hudson River in New York State. It's called Kikuit. It is a Roman country estate of Italian Renaissance design, and look at the fabulous grounds of this estate. Columns overlooking a rose garden, a naked statue of Venus gazing toward her pavilion temple. The estate also boasts of zodiac signs and, yes, an Egyptian obelisk. John D. Rockefeller also had a very fancy, incredible home in New York City. Inside was this secluded salon, designed in Babylonian and Moorish motifs. An ornate dragon serpent monstrance sits at the center of the fireplace mantel, between the pair of lit candelabra. Did Rockefeller use this private sanctuary to meditate and communicate with spirits? We traveled to New York City to see Rockefeller's golden boy, a statue and fountain of Prometheus, son of Zeus, the god of the heavens in the Greek religion. Yes, the mystery religions are prominent among the Illuminati families. This is the Rockefeller Center. This is the fountain of Prometheus in his eternal circle of power. It was Prometheus, according to the occult Luciferians, son of Zeus, who gave holy fire to man in the form of sexual passion and activity. And thus, the Illuminati cult is permeated with hidden sexual dogma and practice. Back across the United States to California, we find the sumptuous mansions and home of J. Paul Getty, multi-billionaire oil magnate, lover of classical architecture and the ancient Greek and Roman mythologies. Much of the artwork and statues are now housed in the J. Paul Getty Museum in Malibu, California. This is Hermes on the grounds of that great estate. This is the plans of the estate, the interior, and notice the wall painting. What a strange, hideous image we find inside the J. Paul Getty Museum. There is also in this museum a Temple of Hercules with a striking geometrical pattern, Masonic in origin, black and white alternating with triangles in a great circle. Leaving the United States, we go to Germany. Oh, I wish we had more time to look at all of the great Illuminati dynasties of Europe, but it will be instructive to look at just one, the late King Ludwig the Mad, King Ludwig II of Bavaria in Germany today. It was an independent nation at the time. This dashing young monarch looks strikingly masculine, does he not? Here he is, just a few years before his tragic death, giving a Masonic hand sign. He was a member of various secret societies. In fact, he was the Grand Master of a secret society called the Order of the Knights of St. George, and King Ludwig the Mad often wore this heavily jewel cross encrusted with precious diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. His estate looks like the Disneyland estate of Mickey Mouse and the other Disney creatures. And in fact, this is Neuschwanstein sitting on a mountain in Bavaria. And it was the model, it was the prototype, the pattern for the Disneyland castle. Neuschwanstein, amazing. Ludwig had many estates, of course. Here in Chiemsee Palace was just one of the palatial homes of Bavaria's King Ludwig the Mad. We see pictured on the ceiling of that palace Poseidon again, with his trident, god of the sea, and his very nubile goddess in his arm. Yes, King Ludwig, like all of the Illuminati, was fascinated by the pagans' gods and goddesses. In Ludwig's Linderhof Castle, we find this colorful painted fresco showing the birth of Venus, the great goddess of love. This is the Empress Elizabeth, a beauty of a woman. She must have been terribly disappointed to discover that her monarch husband, King Ludwig, was a homosexual. He wanted sex only with other men and boys. It turns out that King Ludwig II had a passionate homoerotic crush on composer Richard Wagner. He promoted Wagner's dramatic pagan operas. This is the same Wagner who a half-century later Adolf Hitler became enthralled with. King Ludwig's Moorish pavilion, which he built to honor the Islamic religion, yes indeed, is a place where the king smoked hashish, ran around nude, and then, as for sex partners, he commanded young soldiers under his authority to strip and had sex with them at this place of evil. Back across the ocean again, we arrive in the city of Sarasota, Florida. We mentioned the circuses and parties of the elite, but there are circuses of a different kind. And this is the home of a man named John Ringling. You'll remember him, the famous pioneer of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. World famous. He designed his home on the order of the Doge's Palace in Venice, Italy. Almost a copy of it. Zodiac planetary symbols decorate the exterior, along with... Could it be that this is Satan? An image of Satan in stone? Yes, it is, on the exterior of the home of John Ringling of the circus fame. His estate was called Kazan. Inside were Gothic windows soaring. And notice the Masonic black and white tiled floor. This is the Ringling Art Museum in Sarasota, Florida, a legacy of this famous circus magnate, featuring a fountain of who? Well, of course, Poseidon or Neptune, as well as many gargoyles and numerous statues of ancient gods and goddesses along the top of this building. Finally, we get to a man who there have been movies made of him, many books written, a man responsible for a chain of newspapers across America, William Randolph Hearst. He was a friend of Hollywood stars. It is once said that he sent a reporter to the island of Cuba and told him to report on the Spanish-American War. This was back in the 1890s. The reporter sent a cable back to his boss, newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst. He says, "I've arrived here in Cuba, but there is no war. How can I write a story? There's no war to write about." Mr. Hearst sent him a cable back, said, "Just stick around there. You write the story, I'll give you the war." And sure enough, the Spanish-American War erupted after a mysterious explosion occurred on the USS ship parked in the harbor there, the USS Maine. Notice the incredible estate, the 125-acre Hearst Castle San Simeon in California, built by William Randolph Hearst, who owned newspapers across this nation. There is, of course, the outdoor Neptune pool, built with lustrous marble, having the sea god, a sculpture of the sea god Neptune or Poseidon, presiding over his domain. In the European newspaper in 1992 was this article by well-known writer Umberto Eco of the insane abundance at Hearst's castle. Insane abundance. You'll remember it was Commodore Vanderbilt of the Vanderbilt dynasty who once said that his desire, his inordinate drive to accumulate money had driven him insane. Well, we have now looked at many of the Illuminati elite, their estates, their secret architecture. You have seen the dragons, the devil's heads, the gods, the goddesses, the zodiacs, the serpents, and all the other motifs and features of this architecture. Architecture of such families as the Rothschilds, the Astors, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Hearsts, and many others. And now I ask you to consider again that famous quote of F. Scott Fitzgerald in his monumental book, The Great Gatsby. He said, "Let me tell you about the very rich. They are different than you and me." Now, having watched the scenes and the insane abundance of the elite, the occultism and the Masonic architecture, I ask you, the viewer of this documentary, to judge for yourself. Are the rich different? Yes, are the Illuminati elite different than you and me?